This is the Voice of Early Childhood podcast. Hello, everyone. Welcome to the Voice of Early Childhood podcast. I am your host. My name is Angelica Solinska, and I'm also the founder of the Voice of Early Childhood. And today I have with me Dr. Stella Louis, who is a freelance trainer and writer and the lead tutor for the Froebel Trust endorsed traveling tutors. She's written many books around observations, child development, and also she has an upcoming publication actually called Let's Talk About Race in the Early Years. So, Stella, thank you so much for coming on to the podcast episode. It's brilliant to have you on. And today we're actually going to be talking about the Froebelian approach. So we'll begin with a phrase that you said in our first meeting, actually, that I picked up on around the Froebelian approach being really helpful in articulating our practice. So I think that's quite a nice quote to kind of begin with. And I'll let you, I guess, expand on that and take us further around Froebel and the Froebelian approach.
Okay, first of all, thank you so much for inviting me. I'm really delighted to be here. The easiest way to answer the question that the Froebelian approach helps us to articulate our practice is when we think about the approach as a whole. The approach is exactly that. It's an approach. It's not an exact way of doing things. It's like, it's, as it says, it's an approach. It's a way of working. And it's an approach that's based on two main ideas, that of unity and that of connectedness. And what that means for us in early years practice is that we need to connect what we teach to children to what's already known. So for Froebel, this idea of unity and connectedness is really connecting with what's known by children. And he kind of argues you can introduce them to new things, providing those new things make a connection to what's already known. So that becomes really important. So the framework is based on that of unity and connectedness, particularly to what children know and can do, and is founded on a set of principles that was originally articulated by Froebel, then re-articulated by Professor Tina Bruce. And these are universal principles because they talk about children learning through, they talk about childhood being a stage within its own right and not a preparation for adulthood. They talk about the different ways children represent things. They talk about what a child can do has to be the starting point of a child's education and not what a child cannot do. So if I go back to this idea of unity and connectedness, you can see how building on the known really helps children become familiar with what's not known. And I think as educators that don't use the Froebelian approach often have a focus on what children cannot do. And that's not really helpful when thinking about children's holistic development. And the approach also focuses on the child's awareness with themselves, their relationships with others, contributing to a family, being part of also a wider community, so the physical world, nature, the environment, and engagement with what the world exposes us to. What Froebel did within this Froebelian approach was he developed resources. He developed educational, worthwhile resources. So they are gifts and occupations. And the gifts are a set of gifts 1 to 6. And the first gift is, you can see them behind me. They're like six balls. And although the balls are the same shape, they are the different colours of the rainbow. And what, children can make connections with a yellow ball and a lemon, or a red ball and a strawberry, or an orange ball and a satsuma, or an orange. Children can kind of go from known to unknown. And although they're all the same form, They're very different in terms of colours, and it's not a resource to teach children about colours. It's a resource to teach them about similarities and differences, and they will be able to make connections for themselves with all they see around them, particularly things in nature. The second gift is it's a little bit like this. So you've got, and these are hanging up on a string. So you've got a sphere, you've got a cylinder, and you've got a cube. And there's a connection between the first gift and the second gift, because the first gift is soft and the second gift is hard. So already you've got one of Froebel's concepts of the law of contrast, or the law of opposites, where things are the same in shape but maybe different in material. And you've got the spear on top, and you've got the cube on the bottom, because these are clear opposites. When you think about movement, this moves and this will stay still. However, the cylinder acts as a connector between the spear and the cube, because if you put the cylinder on its side, it will roll and move just like the spear. But if you put it flat, it will be still. So his resources are quite clever. They've been designed from a real sophisticated mathematical system, because when you then look at gift three is a cube box, and inside of that box, the cubes have been the cubes have been divided into 8 cubes, and children are exposed to those. And then you can see where they're building on the known and the unknown, because this shape is known, but it's not been known in that division. And gift 4 is another cube, box of cubes, but this time it's been divided again into 8, but it's been divided into 8 planks, so kind of little rectangular planks. So you have the same form, it's been divided into different shapes. So you're better able to build on the known and really extend the unknown. And then gift 5 is a combination of more cubes, but this time the cubes are divided into halves. So you get diagonal lines, and then they've been divided into quarters. So you get prisms. So children are being exposed to a number of different ways to take parts of a whole and make it a whole. And then gift 6 relates to gift 4, because the planks have been divided further. So even though on the surface it just looks like it's a box of boring blocks, actually it's through exploration with them, using both of their hands and their imagination, that children are really able to explore. And I think the gifts offer children lots. And today the modern day take on the gifts are block play. Froebel also introduced the mother songs, and he really focused, I think, the mother songs, although I think his gifts and occupations are well known internationally, the mother songs are less well known. But the mother songs, I believe, is his biggest contribution, because all of the thinking that he applied to the gifts and the occupations, he also applied to the mother songs. Now, I don't think we think very much about what songs we sing with children. I think sometimes we just sing songs because they're silly, because they're funny, rather than they're songs that actually are giving children information about their world. Songs that Froebel sang with children connected to what was known. So there would be songs that were sung about farming or gardening or baking, because these things were known to the children. And within that song, there were layers and layers and layers of information where the adult could guide and give children information. But with the mother songs, he almost focuses on 5 parts of development. He focuses on the child's relationship with its mother. And Colin Trevarvan talks about this as like proto-conversations. We know that now. Remember, Froebel was around in 1800. He also focuses on the child's physical development, the link between, movement and being aware of that space and sensory development. We know lots more about that now with brain development. And, I think he was really, really forward thinking. It also focuses on everyday life, so things that children see in their everyday. So the songs weren't silly songs, they were songs that had meaning. They connected to what
Mm-hmm.
was known or was going on in their environment. He also introduced the idea of making children aware of symbols and then introducing children more explicitly to symbols when he goes through the sequence of the mother songs, which I will do in a minute. And then he also introduced a moral aspect to the songs. This idea that he wanted children to do the right thing because it was the right thing to do, rather than children being given a sticker because they've done the right
Mm-hmm.
thing. So this moral life of the child was really important, and this idea of exposing children to new things in the wider world. And just to demonstrate how much he thought about development was that he developed 50 songs, and they all focused on the 5 areas that I just talked about. Um, First, he talked about singing lullabies with babies. And then he talks about using your whole hands, quite literally, because when you think about development, what babies are able to do. And I think this helps babies develop an awareness of like actions have meaning.
Mm-hmm.
And then he introduces this idea of isolating the fingers. And this is a really important thing because this really does introduce children to the idea that this could stand for, a worm in nature, or it could actually be a person. So his songs are really thinking about children's development. And he talks about crossing the midline and the importance of that, and songs and action songs that encourage that development. Because if children don't cross the midline, they struggle. I remember I observed a child once, he was drawing, and when he was drawing on this side of the paper, he used this hand. And when he was drawing on this side of the paper, he used that hand. Crossing the midline becomes really important for children's holistic development. He talks about songs that are on the spot and upper body, because then, you can see children developing rhyme, rhythm, they're watching other people, they're having to develop those things as well as controlling themselves in a particular space. He then moves on to whole body movement. So even within the mother songs, you can see the complexities of development and how he kind of with each different stage, you see a different level. Movement games were important. He talks about the symbolic life of the child, and I think Professor Tina Bruce really draws on the symbolic life of the child when she writes the 12 features of play that really underpin, just like the principles, this Froebelian approach. So you can see, in order to articulate my practice or Froebelian practice, I'm not just drawing on one thing, I'm articulating many, many, many things. And I think what you find is with the Froebelian approach, everything links, always links. And there's a idea that, or a Froebelian mantra that we say, whatever stage it is children are at, we need to be that stage. But equally, we need to be able to, when we're observing children's play, we need to be able to identify what it is that we are seeing. So are we seeing imitative play, or are we seeing symbolic play, or are we seeing creative play? And Froebel's quite clear, particularly with creative play, that the only limitations are the materials that children are given. Hence, ideas like the opposites, like I spoke about with Give 2, become really, really important. I think the principles, in terms of articulating your practice, having an opportunity to really unpick the principles, and in light of how we talk about, our 2-year-olds are rising to, our 3-year-olds are getting ready for school, and we're always talking about children's readiness for. But with Froebel, a fundamental principle is childhood is a stage within its own right. It's my birthday next week, and I'm getting older. But do you know what? I'm not getting ready to be a pensioner. I'm not spending I'm being serious. I'm not spending my time thinking, oh, am I going to use this Zimmer frame? Am I going to need a Stella stair lift to get up the stairs? I'm living my life here and now, and I'll overcome whatever obstacle when it comes my way. I think we're always getting children ready for things. And one of the things I really respect about the Froebelian approach is that it respects how children learn through their senses, how they explore. And the Froebelian educator would structure their learning environment in a way to enable children to develop their ideas or conceptual ideas, whatever they may be. And it's about observing children, but also giving children a really, really rich environment and being able to articulate the principles. And maybe that first one, that childhood is a stage within its own right, rather than preparation for the next stage.
Hiya! Just quickly, I wanted to ask a favour from all of the listeners and viewers. It would really help this podcast if you subscribe on the platform you are listening or watching on. This will help the Voice of Early Childhood podcast to continue putting out thought-provoking and reflective episodes with a range of guests. And if you are enjoying listening to this podcast, please do share it with someone else who you think would love it too. And of course, as always, we encourage you to share your voice too. If you have reflections, thoughts, and comments, please do share this episode on social media with your comments and tag the Voice of Early Childhood. Let's keep these thought-provoking discussions going. Thank you. I'll let you get back to the episode now. And what I'm hearing from a lot of the things that you said so far is the importance of the adult's role, because you were saying, about the different materials, for instance, these different resources. It's about the adult being able to add to the child's exploration and then extend on and build and scaffold on their learning. So it sounds like the adult is so important in this approach. And really, I guess we have really taken that from the Froebelian approach and into what we do now, into our practice currently, and the different kind of frameworks, the EYFS in England, and different curricula that we have as well.
Yeah, I think the role of the adult is fundamental. There are three lots of Froebelian principles. There's the Tina Bruce principles. There's also a set of principles that were articulated by Helen Tovey. And more recently, there's been some principles that were articulated for the Froebel Trust by Jane Winnett and Katrina Gill. I think what's powerful about those principles, particularly the Froebel Trust principles, is that they talk about the role of the nurturing adult being knowledgeable about things like child development. I think Froebel really got children because he kind of says that, we need to look for children's good intentions. Sometimes we observe children doing things and we don't get what they're doing, but we automatically assume that they've done the wrong thing. Having guidance like look for children's good intentions when you come across children doing things that are unusual, just makes you stop and reflect and kind of question, what might this child trying to be find the answers to, and how might I be able to support them? I think for Froebel, child development was really important, and it was based on observation. And it was once you observed what it was that the children could do, that would be the starting point of the child's education. And that goes right back to the principle, what a child can do, not what a child can't do, being really, really important. And I think you can see how the principles help you to articulate children's learning, and it also helps you to articulate what you know about children. Another one of the principles talks about learning should not be compartmentalized, for everything linked. And a key Froebelian mantra is linked, always links. So if you know what's known, you can make links with all areas of the curriculum. So it really is about having a knowledgeable adult that can observe. But when I say observe children for, involved in play that they initiate for themselves rather than the activities that adults choose to lead. Children need freedom, but they also need some guidance. But I think when we're observing what children know, we need to be observing them in conditions that are right for them. And spontaneous play tends to display not just their ideas, but it also tends to display their experiences. And if I go back now and talk about the network for learning, that also underpins the Froebelian approach. And I link this now to Tina Bruce's 12 features. Children's first-hand experiences become really important. They need real, literal and concrete experiences if we are going to expect them to develop their imagination and then eventually tell us about what they know. They don't just need to look at books about a hedgehog. They need to come up close and personal with a hedgehog for that to have the connection and be meaningful. I think giving children just a book about a hedgehog for them to draw information from is just not good enough. They need real, tangible, first-hand experiences. So they've then got a memory so they can recall, they can add to, they can rearrange, and they can make that knowledge their own.
So in terms of observing children, then it's what we see often in practice or hear in practice currently is all around children's interests. Now, this seems like it's not enough to really be thinking about. So we think, the child is playing with cars, therefore they're interested in cars, we're going to provide more of this. Almost seems, in comparison to what you're describing now, like a bit of a deficit look at what we're observing there. I think from what you're saying, observing children, what we need to do is to understand where they are at. That's why we're observing them. And then, like you say, start from the child. We're not just observing them to understand what they enjoy. We're observing them to understand what they already know, what they already have awareness of, and then we can build on that.
Yeah, I think it's a difficult question to answer, because I think, we have a curriculum, and whatever your curriculum may be, and let's just focus on the EYFS, that talks about kind of going with children's interests. And I think it's important that we adapt and we change our curriculum to go with children's interests, but we need to understand what that interest is. It's not just about cars. So if we've got a child that's playing with cars, that child might be doing a whole variety of things. It might be interested in speed. It might be interested in rotation. It might just be sensory. Whatever that child's exploration is or inquiry is, we need to understand the detail of it so we can support and embed, then extend and build on, or maybe even add new things based on what they know. It's not just about adding more cars. And I think, when I think about how children develop their conceptual ideas, I think lots of their conceptual ideas are developed through their repeated actions. And I'm talking about schemas, which are a part of child development, which Froebel absolutely got. And, he has observations of children one of the first marks they make is kind of circles in the sand or on the steam of a window. And I have memories of doing things like that myself and seeing young children do that. So Froebel absolutely got schemas. And I think we have to go beyond just seeing the repeated action and thinking we need to do more of a particular thing, to delve in a little bit deeper, to be thinking, what conceptual ideas are children developing, and how can I put things in my environment that are going to build on what they know and they can do, yet support and extend that conceptual understanding, taking them to a deeper level. I once had a teacher say to me that if a child can do something 3 times, if they assess a child doing something 3 times, as far as they were aware or concerned, the child had learnt that thing. And I struggled with that, because doing something 3 times doesn't really mean very much. I think children learn in a very different way from us, and there's a process they go through of looking, finding, feeling, seeking, and doing. And it's the doing that leads to problem solving, reasoning, and understanding. But they need time to analyze, organize, interpret, and reinterpret their learning and practice newly acquired skills. And now I'm drawing on the network for learning, and we don't often give them that time. We're just focused on the outcome. Now, I'm not saying the outcome is not important. The outcome will come, but it won't come if we don't respect the process. Children are really good at reciting things, remembering things, telling us what we want to hear. But when the learning is meaningful, It is really meaningful. It's something that they will draw on throughout their life. So connecting to what's known becomes important. Someone I was teaching last night, one of my practitioners said that she had done a cafe in her home corner. And I asked if any of the children had been to a cafe, and she didn't know. Now, there's nothing wrong with her wanting to introduce some unknown, but if they haven't been to a cafe, it's all going to go over their heads.
Yeah.
Remember, children learn from their first-hand experiences. And Chris Affey often said, no matter what you want to teach children, you need to give them the real concrete experience before you're going to get the imaginative and the abstract. The real becomes really important. And I think the real experience is teachable moments for us as educators.
Mm-hmm. It's really, it's a really great way of seeing things like teachable moments, rather than a lot of the time we talk about adult-led versus child-led learning, and it's not necessarily as black and white as that. And we can kind of get bogged down in worrying about whether something is too adult-led and whether we need everything to be child-led. But actually, like you say, teachable moments is the thing to really look out for and to, I guess, capitalize on. And, whilst you're observing, then you're looking for teachable moments as well, I guess, in terms of, you're finding that space or gap when you feel like maybe you can extend the child's learning rather than interrupt with their learning and what they're doing.
And I think you're right. Teachable moments about building on what's known, this idea about unity and connectedness. And that's how you begin to articulate practice. If you know your families, if you know your community, if you know your children, if you know what their experiences are, you can really find many, many teachable moments. If you don't know, you're navigating your way through your curriculum with blindfolds on. And that's not always helpful to children.
Yeah, definitely. I think that's a great summary, really, of everything that you've said and the Froebelian approach. A lot of the time, I feel like when we're talking about pioneers and theorists, we can list a lot of the things that they have talked about, but then we're not really getting that overall message. And I think the overall message here, like you said just now, it's that connectedness and unity. But why? And it's because you then know and understand your family's children, the communities that you're teaching in, and that allows you to bring in the best practice for them, for that community, for that context, rather than just doing the same thing that you might do, in another setting. You need to really apply everything to that context where you are at with your families and children, rather than copy another curriculum. And this is why every curricula should be different, shouldn't it, in terms of, really applying to where you're at. And even in that context, so that the following year you may stay in the same setting, but you're going to have different children that you're teaching. So actually your curriculum still needs to change with the children that come in. It's not just about that community that you're in. It's about those children that come in from the different communities, and it's always changing, and their experiences are changing, even if they are from a similar community as well.
Absolutely. And I've often said that if practitioners have a good level of child development, they can navigate their way around any curriculum. It's when they don't have a good level of child development that they kind of interpret these curriculums literally. I think it's really important for practitioners to have an in-depth knowledge of child development. I think sadly child development has just disappeared from many courses, whether it be a teaching course or childcare courses. And I think if practitioners have a knowledge of child development, have a knowledge of a regular child, they're better able to navigate their way around any curriculum. And the principles, those universal principles articulated by Professor Tina Bruce, also helps us to navigate our way around the curriculum, because the focus is on how children learn rather than what children learn. And I think if we don't have a knowledge of child development, we focus on the what. if we do, we will focus on the how. And the how becomes really important. How children learn hasn't changed for hundreds of years. The what changes all the time. If you only focus on the how, you absolutely lose sight of the what. And I think what I'm going to say, just to kind of wrap up and conclude, is have a look at Tina Bruce's 10 principles that are universal. They really do underpin what we want for children. I think we got to build on what's known, what we know about the children. So what children know must be the starting point. I think we need to think about our environments, and we need to be able to offer children worthwhile experiences where they can find out about the parts and the whole, so they can rearrange things into a logical sequence, not from, not expecting them to go straight from no experience to abstract, but from experience, from concrete experience, let them gradually move through a process of abstract thought. I think we need to start from observing children and observing them in their spontaneous play, and be aware that when we are observing them in that play, they will show us their ideas, they will show us their experiences, and it's down to us to build in that connection and that unity by building on what's known. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Stella. And I think it's been a fantastic episode in terms of, really delving a little bit deeper into the Froebelian approach, and not just the usual things that we always read. And yeah, it's been brilliant to hear some of those kind of key messages, especially, on unity and connectedness. That's really what I picked up. And then understanding of child development. It's really important to really drill those messages. So before we completely wrap it all up, it would be great if you can tell us a little bit about your upcoming publication, because it's being published quite soon, in a couple of months, really, isn't it? So that's really exciting.
Yes, it is exciting. It's the first time I've written with my daughter, Hannah Betteridge. Our publication came about really as a result of the death of, or the murder, should I say, of George Floyd. We both were doing work on things like unconscious bias and race in our jobs, but we decided to kind of come together. And, this was one of those projects that I did not because I wanted to do, I did because I felt responsible, and I was able to do it with my daughter, who's an amazing writer. It's a really important piece of work, and it encourages us to think about how we teach children about difference and how we help children develop a respect for others. Parts of the book are quite challenging, but actually when you think about it, to experience racism can be even more challenging. So whilst it might take you out of your comfort zone for a little while, I think about what's happening to children when they are not developing a sense of belonging in the place that they are spending large periods of their time. I think we explore unconscious bias, and we explore having difficult conversations. It's a groundbreaking book. I am absolutely honoured that Professor Kathy Nutt-Brown has written a really wonderful review of the book for us. And I can't wait for it to be out. So please have a look at it. It's a good read. There are challenging bits, but we all have a responsibility to do something about the discrimination in our world. And I'm clear in the book, we're both clear that whilst we're not responsible for the world that we've been born into, we are responsible for changing it. And, that's that framework again that I take from Froebel.
Fantastic. Thank you, Stella. So the book is called Let's Talk About Race in the Early Years. It's out in the summer, isn't it, this year?
Yes.
So, yes. So 28th of June. Fantastic. Okay, well, we'll make sure that that's visible on the Voice of Early Childhood website as well. And you can find a link to that, and also more information on the Froebel Trust and the Froebelian approach as well. So thank you to all of our listeners and our viewers, and please do share this episode with those who you think will also find it interesting. And a huge thank you to Stella for being on the podcast episode.
My pleasure. Thank you. Thank you for the invite.